Good news, everybody. So, if you want the most up-to-date, reliable stimulus check information and the latest news on any sort of stimulus payments, you want to be sure to continue watching this video. There's a ton of information that you might not have known. Because every day, I spend hours and hours compiling information on the latest stimulus news. And as I can say without a doubt, there's a ton of information, that there is a ton of news to talk about. So, let's get straight into it. Millions of Americans will soon receive financial relief in the form of direct payments. That's for a total of $3,000. High inflation does continue to challenge the United States. So, by the end of this month, most Alaska residents should have another $3,000 in your bank account. On September 20th, Alaska has sent out already many state stimulus checks from their permanent fund. Now, these dividends are larger than normal this year, in part of the addition to a $650 relief check. Now, rather than send out a separate payment, Alaska is sending out the check all in one. In 2021, this check was around $1,100. Now, it's around $5,500 for 2022 for so many people across the state. The Alaska Senate passed a budget. It would actually include a $4,200 permanent fund dividend and a $1,300 energy relief check. This is close to a $5,500 stimulus payment that people in many states are receiving, but more specifically for Alaska people. However, the price tag is an estimated $3.6 billion for the House. And instead, the final budget approved by state legislators included $3.4 billion from the permanent fund, which was split between dividends to residents and the general fund. It also added a $650 energy relief check to the 2022 permanent fund for a total expected payment of $3,200. The Alaska governor has said that Alaskans have waited a long time for this check, for this huge stimulus check, and it's only going to help at a very important time like this. And this is what I'm saying, everybody. President Biden should do the same thing as what many of these governors are doing, and that's send out stimulus checks before it gets too late. There's so many people in need of stimulus payments. There's so many people in need of an inflation relief check. So it makes sense for President Biden to do this. But some Republicans are expressing hostility toward Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin said that his campaign used a government funding bill to advance permitting reform, adding to doubts about the effort's future. Now, Senator Manchin's efforts about the big shot for a stimulus check has also made some Republicans upset. Now, Senate Republican John Barrass out told reporters, if you're now looking for Republicans to support and give you more cover than you have right now, you're not going to find it with us. Manchin reached a deal to pass permitting reform with Chuck Schumer, along with President Biden and Nancy Pelosi. First of all, everybody, according to the White House's announcement today, 21 internet providers, including AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon, have agreed to their increase in internet speeds or cut the price of their services for eligible households. During a press conference today, Biden told reporters high-speed internet is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Many families cannot afford access to high-speed internet, so they do without or sacrifice other necessities to help pay for broadband service. The announcement is part of the administration's push to expand access to fast, affordable internet services in rural areas. The bipartisan infrastructure law that Congress passed last year allows certain income families to receive a $30 monthly benefit or $75 a month to help pay for broadband service. Those who apply for that benefit to one of the broadband plans recovered under the deal announced today will essentially get a high-speed internet service at no cost. Biden also said this partnership is going to change people's lives. About 48 million households, or nearly 40% of those in the country, are eligible for the broadband benefits. To make sure that eligible families take advantage of the offer, the Biden administration is launching a website that will provide details about how they can sign up and find participating internet providers in the area. Households with annual incomes at or below 200% of the federal poverty level are eligible for the benefit program. That is about $27,000 for an individual or $55,000 for a family of four. Families also can qualify if they are enrolled in other federal programs like Medicaid or SSDI. Kamala Harris also stated, every person in our nation, no matter how much they earn, should be able to afford high-speed internet and a high-speed internet plan. That is why we are here to put this plan together. Do you trust President Biden and the Democrats in sending out more stimulus checks? Tell me what you think in the comments below. So we have a ton of good news about the fourth stimulus check, everybody. Be sure to continue watching this video to never miss out on it. Now, if you're feeling the crunch of higher prices at the grocery store or the gas pump, relief for your wallet could be on the way. Both federal and state legislation has been introduced and in some states passed to send rebates or stimulus checks directly to people who qualify. Governor Janet Mills signed a supplemental budget late last month to authorize direct relief payments of $850 for Maine taxpayers, Full-time residents with a federal adjusted gross income of less than $100,000 are eligible. Couples filing jointly will receive one relief check per taxpayer for a total of $1,700. Taxpayers are eligible for the payment regardless, everybody, of whether they owe income tax to the state residents who did not file a state tax return for 2021. The one-time payments, which are being funded by the state surplus, are scheduled to be delivered by mail starting June 1st to the address on your 2021 main tax return. And the state of Indiana also ended up with a healthy budget surplus at the end of 2021. In December 2021, the governor, Eric Holcomb, announced that Indiana taxpayers would get a $125 one-time tax refund after they file their taxes. There's no income requirement, and residents must have filed a tax return to be eligible. So folks, if you found this video useful and helpful, and if you want to know more information about the fourth stimulus check, tell me in the comments down below. So we definitely have a lot of good news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI, and SSDI. You want to continue watching this video to never miss out on it.
They're proclaiming that we need to fund more police, and they're certainly right now. Unfortunately, we have to live with the results of those policy choices, as all of these. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to yield next the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
I thank the gentleman from Louisiana. Thank you for having this time. Madam Speaker, the Biden administration spent the better part of last year trying to convince American families facing higher prices that inflation was transitory. Yet, new inflation numbers show that the cost of everything is still on the rise, including gas, which just hit record highs this week. Prices are increasing rapidly at an unsustainable pace, but President Biden isn't changing course. In fact, he said that his administration's policies help, not hurt inflation. That's a bold statement for an individual that came to Washington, D.C. when I was 8 years old, almost 50 years ago. That's a bold statement from a president that perpetrates big government spending and has done everything in his power to destroy American energy. To President Biden, inflation is just a number, but for working American families, it is the crushing result of this administration's failed policies that must be overturned to get our nation back on the right track. That's why this week, along with 22 of my Republican colleagues, we introduced a resolution calling for greater American oil and natural gas production. Our resolution reaffirms that American energy is the
next stimulus checks go out to a more targeted group of people. For example, Susan Collins, a Maine Republican, told Politico, "I was the first to raise the issue, but there seemed to be a lot of agreement that those payments need to be more targeted." So folks, do you believe the stimulus checks have to be more targeted? Tell me in the comments. So action is finally being taken by the president and many members in Congress. Get ready for fourth stimulus checks, everybody, because we have some developing news that a fourth stimulus payment might come out sooner than expected. So it was just announced that lawmakers and the Alaska House of Representatives have just proposed a plan to pay eligible people an additional around $1,300 on top of the annual permanent fund dividend. So everybody, according to lawmakers, a one-time $1,300 energy relief check to all Alaskans would really help them during this time. And this proposal comes from a bipartisan majority coalition, and it's said to be part of a budget debates. Representative Bryce Edgman said that the roughly $900 million in funding for the rebate would come from the state's general fund. And so, in an official statement, the energy relief check would use some of the state's unexpectedly high revenue this year to pay residents so they can offset rising fuel costs, record inflation, and a recovery from the crisis. So, this is not the first time lawmakers have proposed payments to Alaskans, on top of the permanent fund dividend. Back in 2008, the legislature approved $1,200 in resource rebate. That was checks for Alaska residents as a way for the state to share some of its multi-billion-dollar revenue. And everybody, let's not forget about this. There are huge developments being made on President Biden's agenda. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters that President Biden will absolutely mention inflation. Like I said, inflation has hit a 40-year high, and the spike in consumer goods is contributing to a gloomy national mood and Biden's slumping approval rating. So President Biden will also attempt to use the Tuesday address to use his speeches to revive efforts to pass his roughly $2 trillion Build Back Better Act. According to a fact sheet from the Biden administration, the Federal Consumer Price Index found overall consumer cost up 7.5% in January, compared to in January of 2022, dashing White House predictions that the figure would begin to fall. And Joe Manchin, who has expressed opposition towards Biden's Build Back Better Act, is saying that inflation could get even worse through the ambitious framework that would have federally subsidized childcare, preschool, home health care, and housing. Social Security is one of the most programs that helped shepherd the most vulnerable Americans through this time. But when prices started rising last year, the country was reminded once again just how deeply Americans, including senior citizens, rely on things like Social Security, SSI, and SSDI. The most significant economic event during Biden's time in office so far has been rising prices and the highest rise of inflation in 40 years. Breaking the stimulus news, everybody.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel members for being here. Let me talk about an issue that is important in my state to help lower costs, which is affordable housing. I want to thank both Mr. Scharf and Ms. Frazier. We've had this conversation, and I know I just recently toured Decatur Commons. It's a $110 million affordable housing rental development in Las Vegas. It's a beautiful multifamily apartment development. It has 480 new units, 240 units for low-income families and 240 units for low-income seniors. City and Wells Fargo helped provide the financing to build this with Nevada Hand in Nevada. Mr. Scharf, in the past 2 years, Wells Fargo provided $128 million to finance 6 affordable rental housing projects, providing nearly 1,000 new affordable units in Nevada. For those 6 developments and in affordable housing just in general, your bank cannot just finance the entire cost of a large development. Isn't that correct? In other words, you look to other complex financing that may come from low-income housing tax credits, the housing trust funds, vouchers, and other funds to make the deal pencil out. Is that right?
That is generally correct, yes.
And Ms. Fraser, in your testimony, you shared that Citi has also provided $5.6